speaking at the end of the COVID-19 virtual meeting, the Nigerian Governors Forum chairman and Governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, said only essential services would be permitted during the national lockdown. Fayemi added that the move will help to strengthen coordinated implementation of necessary public health recommendations across states, and governors have resolved to set up COVID-19 committees at the regional level headed by their state commissioners of health. Despite the drastic fall in crude oil price globally for the past 2 months, the allocation to the 3 tiers of government rose by 199.36 billion naira to 780.92 billion naira in March, higher than the 581.56 billion naira shared in February. The allocation, which was made after a virtual FAC meeting on Wednesday, is made up of 597.67 billion naira statutory revenue, 120.2 billion naira value-added tax, and exchange gains of 62.92 billion naira. A breakdown of the amount shows that the federal government got 217.77 billion naira, state received 110.45 billion naira, LGs, that's local governments, got 85.15 billion naira. All producing states, 32.29 billion naira, while revenue generating agencies received 151.98 billion naira. The committees also disclosed that the balance in the excess crude account now stands at $72.22 million. Of course, the effect will start coming from the month of April, because talking about the oil market, I needed to comment on that. We have the forwards, that's the futures market. But moving ahead, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, on Wednesday announced that the country earned $434.85 million from the export of crude oil and gas in January 2020, representing 94.3% increase compared to the $223.81 million earned in December 2019. In a statement on its monthly financial and operations report for January, NNPC says the crude oil export sales alone contributed $336.65 million to January's earnings, amounting to 77.42% of the total earnings and representing an increase of over $136 million earned from crude oil sales in the previous month. The NNPC also noted that export gas sales in January amounted to $98.20 million, adding that from January 2019 to January 2020, the country exported crude oil and gas valued at $5.18 billion. All right, let's quickly move ahead. Talking about, you can join us on all our social media platforms, actually. Their IDs are on the screen for you. We are streaming live on our website, www.moneylinewithnancy.com. When you go there, you can watch. If you're not physically with a television set, you can also join us on Facebook, Moneyline with Nancy. On Twitter, we're also there, Moneyline AIT. You can find me on Twitter also at Nancy Ilo. Drop your comments, opinions, and your questions regarding what we are facing right now as a nation, the health crisis as well as the economic crisis. On Instagram, I am also there at Nancy Ilo. You can find the show on Instagram at _Moneyline with Nancy. On YouTube, go to YouTube, just type Moneyline with Nancy. You get to see a lot of our shows there, a lot of interviews that I have conducted, so you can watch those editions. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. All right, let's quickly take a break, I suppose. And when we do come back, we will continue to take you through the program. Don't forget that at the beginning, I did say that I'll be speaking with Dr. Badaya Milafia, a development economist, a former deputy governor at the Central Bank of Nigeria. We'll be looking at the pandemic economy. What are the implications for Nigeria? The measures we're taking so far. Should we tweak the measures? Should we continue with the measures? And will these measures get us out of this crisis? Please tell a friend to tell a friend. It's Moneyline with Nancy segment on COVID-19 Watch. We'll be right back.
It is not overselling it to say the fate of the global economy is at stake as the coronavirus pandemic continues to spread across all countries in the 7 continents of the earth, with unprecedented disruption to economic activities across all sectors, especially oil prices and tourism. However, the world may be facing a more devastating crisis if the food and agriculture sector is not given the necessary attention and intervention to sustain production of food while the lockdown lasts. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, the number of people facing acute food insecurity could nearly double this year to 265 million due to the economic fallout of COVID-19, as job loss and lower revenues could add additional 130 million people to the already existing 135 million people suffering from acute hunger globally. In East Africa, countries like Ethiopia and Kenya are struggling to maintain the outbreak of billions of desert locusts, posing a huge threat to the region's food security. While in many nations, farming activities are either suspended or barely ongoing, largely affected by the lockdown imposed by governments. Although in Nigeria, the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Sabo Nanono, has said the ministry has developed immediate, short and medium-term plans to mitigate the wrath of COVID-19 on agricultural value chains and help in generating momentum for post-COVID-19 recovery plan of the government, with agriculture being the main thrust for achieving growth, diversification and job creation. However, there is little or no visible measures on ground to tackle this looming hunger crisis. Helena Olori, reporting for Moneyline with Nancy.
Welcome back to the program. In case you're just tuning in, it's Moneyline with Nancy segment on COVID-19 where we keep you up to speed with the economics of the pandemic. We're looking at the pandemic economy, the implications for the country. Joining me right now is my guest, Dr. Badaya Melafia, a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, as well as a development economist. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you so very much, Nancy. Great nation of people.
Good. Doctor, let's just hit the ground running. Speak to me about your sentiments, what we're passing through right now. The health crisis, coronavirus is in the country, not just in Nigeria, but in, I think, 52 countries right now in Africa. Speak to me about your sentiments concerning this crisis.
Well, Nancy, this is what we would call the perfect storm, or what in high finance is called the black swan. The black swan in probability theory is an unanticipated, totally unexpected event that is complex, of far-reaching implications with no easy solution on site. So it's a black swan that one would imagine couldn't really happen, but it has happened. There is the hype and there is the reality. And often the two are mixed up. And so my first instinct is to say we should all be calm. We should abide by the rules of hygiene and social distancing and observing some of the basics that are needed to keep our communities, our homes, and families together in these very difficult times. But I can assure you it's a very tough time. The impact in statistical terms, in terms of human statistical terms, is actually not as bad as the unquantifiable damage in terms of world economics. There are just about 2.4 million cases all over the world. And for a population of 7 billion people on this planet, 2.4 million is not that terribly bad. After all, epidemiologists will tell you that more people will die from malaria, from typhoid, from cancer, from snake bite, from road accidents than actually that number of people, victims. And the actual deaths are something like almost 200,000. So we have reason to be very concerned because it's a new thing. All the people who are giving all kinds of nostrums, including the professors of medicine, they are just doing guesswork because this thing is completely new. Nobody fully understands it. Nobody knows whether it is seasonal. Nobody knows whether it is recurrent. Nobody knows even the level of molecular mutation of this wicked virus. We don't know whether it's here to stay or when it will go and if it will go. So these are all imponderables. And because of that, there is room for caution. There's room to take extreme care. And this is the time for our leaders to stand up and be counted. I would urge our people to remain calm, to abide by the rules of basic hygiene, to observe social distancing rules, and to do what we can to maintain sanity. At the economic front, it is a disaster comparable only to the Great Depression of the 1930s. It's even way beyond the financial crisis of 2007-2008. So, Nancy, this is really where we are. Commodity prices have collapsed, even though they're inching back. Stock markets have lost trillions. Whole sectors are paralyzed, including aviation, tourism, and the rest of it. Wild gyrations in financial markets, and really a nightmare scenario. But we must keep hope alive.
Doctor, what do you think about the handling of this crisis since the first case of coronavirus was confirmed in Nigeria in the month of February, precisely 27th of February? Since then till now, how have you seen the handling of this crisis by our leaders?
Well, to be honest, we reacted very slowly, and that's not good enough. My impression is that some of our leaders just ran to hide and take care of themselves first before thinking of anybody else. Some of them, even as we speak, you don't know where they are. They're speaking from some hidden corners, scared and not exercising that leadership that this country needs at this hour. But I say kudos to our professionals, our doctors, our nurses. I think they are giving this thing a hard fight. The Lagos State Commissioner even the Honorable Minister of Health, I can see that they've lost weight in the last couple of weeks, and that's a good sign that they are working around the clock. And I put my faith not so much in government, but in the resilience of our people. And Nancy, you remember that when Ebola came, our people rose to the occasion. Our doctors, our nurses, people like Stella Ameyo paid with their lives that this scourge will pass away. And, we must remember them as some of our greatest heroes. If we conquered Ebola, which I believe was deliberately brought to Nigeria to kill millions of our people, we conquered it. I believe that even this evil wind will pass. But I'm very concerned about the palliatives that people are talking about, and the way that our bureaucrats and, the governmental apparatus have reacted. I'm not very impressed at all. There is a lack of transparency. Some of these distributions are being done without proper data. We don't know who the beneficiaries are. There's a lack of transparency in the whole process. We even heard one of the ministers allegedly saying that it should only be for the North because the South have other means of getting aid. They have friends abroad who send them money transfers. I think these are very irresponsible statements, and they are unbecoming of an honorable minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. A pastor just called me yesterday, and it's a very close friend of mine from Kaduna, and he was almost in tears. He said that in the night, they will go to only certain areas and issue them bags of rice and other foodstuffs and so on with envelopes of 20,000 in some ethnic and religious areas, and in the others, people are completely abandoned to their fate. It is crises like these that reveal the character of people. People with moral character, with love of country, will treat everybody fairly, equally, and transparently. I have anecdotal evidence that this is not the case, and this is very sad indeed. It says more about those kind of people than it says about our country and our future.
Doctor, what kind of measures do you think that we should begin to take right now? What is it that we are supposed to be doing that we are not doing now?
Well, to be honest with you, Nancy, the communication is not that good. We should mobilize all our community leaders. There should be points of communication, even in our local languages, in our dialects. We need to see more of that. And the lockdown should be done within a framework of a clear system of transparent distribution of basic necessities. I don't like comparing us with other countries, but if you look at Rwanda, if you look at Ghana, what they've done is much more robust. The other day, Paul Kagame of Rwanda was seen on TV going by himself from house to house, supervising the distribution of food. They've decided, okay, for the rest of the year, they are not going to pay electricity. The same thing in Ghana, that people are staying at home, they are not working, they'll be given some food, they'll be given some assistance, they are not to pay electricity, the government would take the bills, and water tankers in Ghana are going from house to house, distributing water. I am not seeing this sort of level of patriotism among our leaders. It's all very selfish, And I don't see that spirit of compassion in them. And that is heartbreaking. And then you would recall that the other week, the National Assembly were questioning what happened to some of the money in the social transfer envelope, about 2 trillion naira. And the following couple of days, the Attorney General's office goes up in flames. The CAC office goes up in flames. 2 days ago...
But Doctor, they came out to say that it's not connected to all of that.
Sorry?
Yes, that the burning of those offices were not connected to that.
I hope so. I hope so. And I'm not saying that they are connected. But I'm saying that, look, in the history of Nigeria, during the time of late Shehu Shagari, when there were allegations of corruption, Nitel building went up in flames, Foreign Affairs went up in flames, 1 or 2 other buildings went up in flames. Look, in a time of crisis, any building that goes up in flame, that minister and head of department must be arrested and locked up until it is proven that it has absolutely nothing to do with the case being investigated. I'm so angry about this. We are not a banana republic. Why must this happen? And why must it happen only at this point in time? This thing must be thoroughly investigated. You see, because, you see, we are not people of sentiments or just emotion. But anybody who's followed this country closely and its political economy will see that there is a trend. And it's what economists call path dependence. If within the leadership traditions and the political culture and the bureaucratic culture, there's a tendency for people to destroy evidence by setting up public buildings in flames, then we must move to checkmate these kind of diabolical creatures. It must not be allowed to take place.
Doctor, yesterday the 36 states governors unanimously agreed that to the implementation of an interstate lockdown, at least for the next 14 days. What do you think of this? Vis-a-vis that a lot of Nigerians have, of course, started complaining, even from the outset of this lockdown, that it's better they get infected by coronavirus than being killed by hunger. What are your, what are your sentiments concerning this? Should the lockdown be extended for us to fight this demon, just like you said?
I don't think so. From what we are seeing, you see, because this is what America is doing, this is what China did, then we say we want to apply the same thing. A cut and paste approach to dealing with this thing will be disastrous. If you look at Kano, I have friends from Kano, and they've been calling me up. I know the kind of thing happening in Kano. And I suspect we're really underestimating the numbers. And you see, when you impose lockdowns in a massively urbanized society with massive, slums, literally, of people living in one cubicle, 10 of them living in one cubicle, and then you lock them up like that for 2 weeks. That is the easiest way to transfer the thing now. It is better for them to be in open air than to be locked up in that small environment. If you are living in Maitama or Asokoro and so on, lockdown for you is nice. You live in a nice house, spacious, and maybe maximum of four members, 5 members in a household, with your BQ far away where your house helps are staying. You can afford to enjoy a lockdown. But for our ordinary people, it is terrible.
Now, Doctor, let me butt in here. Don't you think that it will be catastrophic if this lockdown is not extended, since there is already a community transmission of this disease? If you say, let's reopen the economy at this time, let's reopen, wouldn't we have more cases than we are recording right now? Take a look at what is happening in Kano. No one even knows what is happening, really, in Kano. So if we are all let out, start working, and we don't take even good precautions, at this point, nobody is safe. Nobody is safe.
Well, Nancy, that is not what I'm saying. The fact that I said we should not have total lockdown doesn't mean that automatically what I'm suggesting is that everybody must go back to their normal line of business as if there's nothing. Of course not. What we want is to kind of partial lockdown and observe curfews and have selective businesses that can be allowed to open and have a system by which people can go to purchase basic foodstuffs and, do basic things. And then the massive buildings where people gather and, hobnob, those ones should be closed down. And of course, it should only be for a couple of hours, even if it is from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4, and open only very basic businesses that are needed by the mass public, especially food related. And then that sort of thing. And then you link that up with a proper system of testing and ensure that nobody goes out without a face mask. You can do that. And I think that, honestly speaking, it is a better way to control it than to lock up and imprison people who are living 11, 12 in a room and say that they are doing lockup. That is the easier way to spread it. And as well, and you are right, some of them are saying that hunger is a greater killer. In fact, somebody argued with me yesterday that honestly, people just dropping down and dying in Kano, in the streets of Kano, it is not coronavirus, it is hunger that is killing them. I don't know. I'm not in Kano right now, and I wouldn't know for sure what is happening. But I think that our leaders must stand up and be counted. I want to see the kind of thing the Prime Minister of Italy has been doing, coming out, engaging with the people, and showing that commitment and that zeal. Because our leaders must show us that they are with us in this, and that together we will survive and overcome.
Aren't you satisfied with what the COVID-19 task force is doing, the presidential task force on COVID-19? They brief every day. They speak to Nigerians, the situation every day. Aren't you satisfied with that?
Well, they are making the right noises, but I can tell you that I haven't called those numbers, but I can tell you a lot of people who have called the numbers given, nobody responds. Or even when they do, they tell you, look, they don't have a vehicle, they're not in a position to do anything about it. Just go back home and stay, and so on, or they don't even come back to you, and so on. A lot of that is going on. So, I don't think that we're operating at the optimal level. It is not just about technical approach. It is also about the level of moral leadership that we should be able to exercise at this point in time.
Oil prices have been on a nosedive, at least since the last 2 months or thereabouts, since we saw Russia and Saudi Arabia in a disagreement. A truce was reached just about 2 weeks ago, but we're still seeing oil prices nosedive, defying gravity. All futures 2-3 days ago was in the negative. U.S. West Texas Intermediate. I checked Bonny Light just before I came into the studio. Bonny Light, which is Nigeria's crude grade, is trading at $14. How much of an implication does this say for Nigeria? It's a double whammy, isn't it? The coronavirus infection, yes, as well as oil price nosediving to record lows.
Well, yes, we should be very concerned. It is an exogenous shock, to put it in that technical language. Yesterday, some of the futures trading was settled in the oil market at $0 per barrel. In Canada, It went even to minus $13. And what that means is that you literally, the buyer the seller must literally pay the buyer to take this wahala off him. This is really what is happening. And we've never seen anything like that in over 70 years. The good news, like also you said, is that the futures market to be settled in about a year is in fact up to $30, the way I understand it. And now the Brent has inched back to about 20. Now, markets react to shocks in this manner. And anybody who follows closely investments and capital markets knows that there's what they call herd behavior. They often behave like sheep. Something goes and sheep run in all directions without even thinking. And a lot of that is the normal human psychological behavior in a time of crisis and difficulty. And it is also because the planes are not flying, they've been grounded. All cars have virtually been grounded. As you know, the oil market, the vehicle, automobile sector, and aviation take up 70% of the world market. So when they are grounded, obviously 70% of the market is out. And also, of course, the big oil companies keep producing and producing as if we're living in normal time. And now hundreds of tankers are wandering with no off-takers, nowhere to go, and not even anywhere to store them. The people with oil depots are complaining that there's no more room to store it. And Canada really took a decision in Calgary, Alberta, the big oil province of Canada, to actually lock down production for now. And what that means is that when they have to kickstart again, it will cost a huge amount just to get started all over again. So this is the sort of thing that nobody would have envisaged, but we are in it. It requires calmness, it requires a high level of wisdom, and also it requires for us to face the things squarely, to know areas of absolute priority. There are things that if we don't spend on them, the world will not come to an end. We put those kind of things aside and concentrate on those vital things that are needed to keep the engine and locomotive of our industrial system going, as well as to look at critical infrastructures, as well as, most importantly for me, social transfers for the poorest and most vulnerable. This is the time when they need it the most. And we must have a system for it. Not what we are doing now. We're simply going to markets and throwing maybe a fraction of the money to people and then pocketing the rest. This is what is going on. I'm sorry. Because if you can't have data for what you're doing, it is corruption. Whether or not you're corrupt, you must be corrupt. Because transparency is the foundation of accountability, and proper record keeping is an absolute necessity in the use of public money. Anybody that doesn't do that is very irresponsible.
The IMF chief did say last week at the virtual IMF World Bank spring meeting that took place in Washington, we all joined virtually, and she did say, I took one thing away from her when she was saying that almost $8 trillion has been spent by central banks worldwide to fight coronavirus. But she said that while you are doing this, please keep the receipts, because accountability and transparency matters. They should all go hand in hand, just to buttress what you said earlier. But
Absolutely.
Doctor, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at it this way. All prices are tanking. The federal government needs money. The Minister of Finance came up with some measures just, I think 2 weeks ago or thereabout, close to $7 billion measure, monies to be gotten from World Bank, IMF, as well as African Development Bank. About 500 billion naira has been set aside to fight this. The president is saying that 774,000 people will be given jobs through public works later this year. 60 billion from that 500 billion naira has been earmarked for that. This is also a government that has raised minimum wage from 18,000 to 30,000 naira. How do you think all of this will really play out? Can government really now pay minimum wage at this time? I'm not just talking of the central government, but also the states. Some have started paying, but how long will they continue to do that? Because it's going to be a painful and a tough road for the Nigerian economy moving forward.
You know, I think they should pay because there's too much excuses and expediency being used, and we are tired of that. And, you know, I said this before, I think with you, Nancy, that if you look at the 30,000 naira people are complaining about, some people, that's when they fuel their cars in a month, just fueling their car, not anything else, fueling their Land Cruisers and so on. And this is, you are expecting a man and a wife with 4 children or whatever to live on that money, to pay their rent, to send the children to school, to feed themselves and to transport themselves to and from work on 30,000. How about Nancy? Let's be human. Let's be humane. They should pay.
How would the money come?
The money will come from waste management, waste reduction. There's huge waste in government already. And if I were president, I would, the first thing I would do is to ask all ministers, permanent secretaries, DGs, heads and departments and agencies of government to bring me a program of waste reduction that they are going to do this year. And I will give incentives to those who have been able to reduce the greatest amount of waste and financial hemorrhage in their ministry or department. And in a time of difficulty, all of us must sacrifice something. All of us must sacrifice something. Governors must sacrifice something. Senators must sacrifice something. Ministers, everybody must sacrifice something. And ordinary citizens like us should go from house to house, helping with food, helping ordinary people. It is our moral duty to do this. So in a time of crisis, if we agree on the principle of sacrifice, then they will find the money to pay. Even if genuinely they can't pay, let there be a commitment that says when the situation improves, they will pay. But we've been hearing this before. You know, many of these people, you'll be hearing billions given to them from Paris Club and so on. And they were meant to pay for wage increases, and then they don't pay, and they don't say what happens to this money. This is not good enough. And, you know, we've blamed the federal government quite a lot. To be honest with you, I don't enjoy lamentations, and I don't enjoy blaming people that I know are often working under very difficult circumstances. And our system is a very difficult one, pressures from all angles, from relations, from political interests, and so on. So it's very difficult. But anybody who is called to leadership must have a clear vision of what is needed and the priority. Human life is sacred. We must create jobs because it is in work that people give meaning and purpose to their lives. And we must provide social transfers and palliatives where needed. And we should be transparent about it. We should keep proper records and administer the system in a transparent and honest and compassionate manner. If we do some of these things, we will come out not only stronger as a country, but we shall be more confident that our future is secure.
Bringing me to the question of looking at everything that is happening now, we've been talking about the economy being diversified, or the revenues of government being diversified for as long as I've been doing this show, for as long as I was born. I know Doctor, I really don't know your age now, but I know that this crisis that we all are facing, you've not seen this kind of crisis before, this type of crisis before. What would you say about reinventing a new Nigerian economy at this time? That tough and hard conversation has to happen. The structure of the economy is not working. If we're going like it's not working, and we shouldn't lie to ourselves. We shouldn't be dishonest to ourselves. Is this the right time to begin to have that conversation and take the right actions to be able to structure the economy well so that we don't waste this crisis, so that something like this does not happen again and we are in the same boat trying to survive?
You know, Nancy, to be honest with you, we should have done that like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, not even now. Now it's looking like almost too late. In the 1980s, Sheikh Zayed of Abu Dhabi gave his ministers an order that within 10 years, we don't want to rely on oil. We want oil to be an insignificant part of our national revenue and foreign exchange earnings. And within 10 years, they achieved it. They have some of the largest reserves of oil in the Gulf, but they don't depend on it for their main bulk of revenue and economic activity. So we should have done that, but it is never too late. This is the time to do it. One thing, Nancy, that is clear is that, honestly speaking, after this storm, the world will never be the same again. People will never be the same again. Communities will never be the same again. Some people are talking about a new world order. Because this crisis is revealing for the first time how vulnerable we all are, whether rich or poor. This thing is a great leveler. It doesn't know whether you are rich or you're poor. Look at my friend, the late Abba Kyari, may his soul rest in peace. Look at it. Very powerful man, dreaded and feared, buried in a common grave like a plebeian. It's a warning to us that power is transient, wealth is transient. It is only what you do for God and for humanity that leave us. So the world is going to be a completely different place after this thing. And the world economy too. So for us in Nigeria, this is a time to go back to the drawing board and to reinvent our country as a productive, industrial, technological, innovative economy. Not this oil rentier state that lives and subsists purely on collecting rents every month from oil companies and then sharing and distributing. And most of it is pocketed anyway by the political elites. That system will no longer work. And we have to do it now. We have to do it today. And interestingly enough, for the Chinese, they write in characters. They wrote cryptographically. They don't write in alphabets. So the Chinese character for crisis is exactly the same character they use for opportunity. So you read it based on the context in which the sentence is made. So, and the Chinese are living it up, because they are loaded with cash. And right now, their economy is coming back, is bouncing back. And what they're doing is buying up assets like crazy. In Italy, in Spain, in France, in Germany, wherever assets are depressed, they're buying up everything. So for them, the crisis was also a big opportunity. So let's look at the opportunity. Let us look at the ray of light, even in this cloud of darkness, and hold on to that ray of light to reinvent our country as a progressive, industrial, scientific, technological society where people live by honest effort rather than by dubious means.
Doctor, let's talk about China. What do you think about how China is being portrayed right now globally, that perhaps they were dishonest and not transparent as to the level of what happened in Wuhan last November? The B part of that question also is, what is this teaching the rest Africa, especially as China is one of our largest trading partners, not just in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we're indebted to China, talking about even supply disruptions. Some few days ago, I did say, looking at all of this, that I think it's time for us to begin to have a conversation about China and how our relationship with China should be moving forward. What do you think?
Well, this is very important, Nancy. I don't think the Chinese have acted with great honor in this crisis. I met the Chinese ambassador a few weeks ago when their crisis was at its peak, and expressed my deepest sympathy and best wishes for the great people of China. And they've done very well. They've literally contained the whole thing. Even Wuhan, I hear, is coming back into business now. But I don't think they've been completely honest with the rest of the world. And I think that they should have called world leaders to discuss in detail this thing, what they are doing and how to go about it, and the lessons. They were just keen to help themselves, and they didn't give a damn about anybody. That is not to say that I take the rantings of Donald Trump seriously. He behaves as a lower than average high school teenager in the way he reasons, and that's not good enough. But, you know, he has a point that the Chinese have not acted beyond reproach. And it seems they have a lot to hide. In fact, the doctor that first blew the alarm bells, rang the alarm bells, was persecuted and hounded by the mandarins of China, and he eventually succumbed to the disease. And in terms of China-Africa relations, you saw some of the video clips of, how they were beating up Africans, throwing out of hotel rooms, throwing out of their homes. I saw a very, very moving picture of, in the cold, a baby with a mother with her little baby, a black woman out in the cold because they were thrown out of their house, which they are living in legitimately. And this is not good enough, and it's deeply disturbing and deeply worrying. So for me, honestly speaking, we have to re-examine our relationship with China. And last week, the president of Tanzania, John Magufuli, revoked a $10 billion loan deal with China. He said that even a madman would not sign such a loan. They sign a loan. And look at what they're financing. They're not financing anything that will make us competitive. Look at it carefully. They only finance things that will benefit them. Extractive industries, roads. Come on. And after 70 years, almost 60 years as a country, and we still need Chinese to build our roads, to build our bridges, to build our airports. We're not a serious people. Something's wrong with us. And they bring criminals, robbers, and thieves from prisons to help them in some of these buildings. That is why you can never compete with them in an international competitive bid, because they always quote the lowest labor costs. And they're extremely exploitative. They will bring the messengers, the cleaners, the laborers, everything from China. They will bring the technology from China. I attended one of the OAU summits, African Union summits the other year, and I saw some Chinese trooping into the building while a conference, a summit of African leaders was going on. I said, who are these people? They said, oh, they are the people maintaining the building. It's true, they built it for us, quote unquote, on free of charge basis, costing over $200 million. But the windows, the bolts, the nuts, everything, the sockets, everything comes from China. And you need the Chinese to continue to maintain them.
Okay, okay, Doctor, let me just butt in here because we are coming to the end of the interview. The last question for you is that what lessons is this crisis teaching us, not just on the health side, but on the economic side?
Well, on the economic side, obviously, is that, dependence on one monocultural commodity is extremely dangerous. It is unwise. And it's also teaching us that, look, building a resilient, diversified economy is extremely important. And we should reduce our level of dependence on outside for everything. Try and go into import substitution, industrialization. For a massive economy of 200 million people to become 410 million in the next 30 years, we can't continue like this. This will be extremely dangerous. And on the health side, I said, please, Nancy, let us also look at our traditional health knowledge systems. I'm told the Chinese are rushing for this shea butter oil. They are desperately scrambling for it, and it's abundant here. Shea butter oil. They call it in Hausa mankade. When you bath, you rub it. It doesn't smell too good, but you rub it in your hands, your face, and even your nose. You eat a bit of it. I'm told it helps, as well as lemongrass and dogonyaro, that is neem tree, from which hydrochloroquine is made. In France, they are administering hydrochloroquine, and hydrochloroquine is made from neem tree, from dogonyaro. You boil it with lemongrass, you drink it hot.
But doctor, they are still, those things are still undergoing studies, not yet confirmed.
Well, you can't wait for people to die. You have to try everything. In any case, it still cures malaria and it is still medicinal. So even if it doesn't work, it is not going to do any harm, including things like garlic and onions and ginger. You boil them together, you drink them, you steam them. We should try everything available in our community. And I believe that God loves us so much, because this woman by the name of the wife Melinda Gates, she was saying, I see bodies everywhere in Africa. And I say, in Jesus' name, this will not happen. May it happen to her, not to us.
Doctor, you're being too extreme right now.
It's an evil prophecy. Sorry. It's a very evil prophecy. I'm sorry. You cannot say, I see dead bodies everywhere. It's a curse. She has no right to put that kind of curse on us.
Perhaps she was also trying to make us understand the enormity of what we are facing, so that we can tackle it in time.
To us, it's an evil curse, and I don't like it. She must withdraw that. She can never say such a thing. By God's grace, the God that has protected Africa for thousands of years will still protect us. Let us have faith in Him, not in evil prophecies.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining me on today's edition of the program. Continue to stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Please keep safe and keep faith and be prayerful.
All right, that was Dr. Obadiah Miliafa speaking with me, at least in the last few minutes. Let's just take a few comments on Twitter coming in. Simon Joseph on Twitter says, we seriously need to reevaluate our relationship with China. He was quoting what Dr. Miliafa says. Hilary says, so much truth said. Thank you so much, Dr. Miliafa. Okay, Kingsburn says, really nice listening to you, sir. Thanks, Nancy, for bringing him to the program. Thank you. Okay, just before I go to the move over to the news studio, I want to say something which I have noticed. The way masks are being worn, especially even from our government officials. You see, masks will be worn like this. Let me just briefly. And it's like this. Let me take off these glasses. And your nose is like this. What are you protecting? I hope you all can hear me. Or it's like this. It's not a fashion item. It's a protective item. If you want to cover, close everything. Close it. And not like this. You can still talk. And it also dovetails to what we are saying. I hope everybody can hear me. So it's not like this. I just wanted to say that. Let's do the right thing. Let's try as much as possible to protect ourselves and protect others. Tosi Obiakeme is in the news studio. Hello, Tosi.